I've been going through some of my old lectures when I used to be able to teach in a classroom. And one of the classes that I taught was criminal law. And I taught that for years and years and loved it. It was so fun. And always had students that were just like light bulbs would go off. And they're like, oh my gosh, okay, we get it. I love that. So I was going through some of my notes, and there was one lecture that included some discussion on SA statistics, and I wanted to share that today. So viewer discretion, I will be talking about some stats and some information around the crime of SA itself, all right? So if that's triggering for you, just scroll by. It won't hurt my feelings. But I think this information is really good, and the students always had an interesting response whenever I gave this piece of the lecture. In criminal law, we have all of the crimes that we go through, right? You've got homicide, involuntary, voluntary manslaughter, premeditated, felony homicide rule. So all of the different categories. It's the same with assault. With an assault, you have an unwanted touching. Now, a battery means you're in fear of an unwanted touching. Sometimes those will get put together, assault and battery. Sometimes states will just call everything an assault. But interestingly enough, we have certain categories of assaults, and one has to do with SA, which is a particular kind of unwanted touching. So when we're talking about SA, we talk about the statistic that I'm sure everybody is familiar with. 1 in 3 women will be SA'd to some degree in their lives. 1 in 3 women. And that stat, we all think, oh yeah, that sucks. Oh, we need to do better. And all great thoughts. But one thing a lot of people don't seem to connect is that if we've got 1 in 3 women, right, it's not the same perp every time. It's not the stranger danger perp that people think about, like running out of the bushes. Those do happen, but they're incredibly rare. Our perps, when we're talking about SA, tend to be male family members or boyfriends or people, guys that like you, or where we've got some kind of ambiguous consent, or they think it's ambiguous, and so things kind of get out of hand a little bit. Those are our typical kinds of SAs. And of course, there is the unable to hear the word no and process it kind of situations. So with these stats and understanding, quite frankly, the ones that are doing the SAs are friendlies. They're people that we know. They're, just everyday people rather than the stranger danger you may think of. And if you recognize that, then when you go into a place and you look to the left and you look to the right and you see 3 guys standing there, one of those guys is probably a perp. Now, I'm not saying they all are, and I'm not saying, we need to start going after people. No. What I am saying is, it's time to recognize what the statistic really means. If you're going into a sporting event, if you're in the movie theater, if you're in a restaurant, and you see 3 fellas, count it out, 1, 2, 3, one of them is probably an SA perp. Now, you may say that's not fair, and okay. And there are serial SAers out there. Absolutely, there really are. But with a statistic that is so significant as 1 in 3 women out there and available, we have to also look and see who is committing these offenses. And that 1 in 3 way of thinking about it, I mean, of course, you may go into a place and there's a dozen guys and none of them are. But a good way to process it, if you're standing there waiting for the subway and you see 3 guys, pick one out, and very likely he's a perp. One of the reasons I want to talk about it is because I had several people asking, how do we go forward when we've got an SA perp in the White House? How do we accept that, and then get up every day and say, wow, there's SA perp in the White House? And so for me, one of the things that I want to share is that it's not just the White House. You can go to a grocery store, you can go anywhere you want where there are 3 or more men, and one of them is going to be an SA perp. So that's not great, and that's not comforting. but it also is reality. And when we're looking around and thinking like 1 in 3 men, it can be, Congress. It can be your executive branch. It can be the United States Supreme Court. I'm serious. When you are in a place where you have 3 or more men, one of them is likely going to be an SA perp. Now, I'm not saying again, go out and do some vigilante things. I'm saying this can be helpful for you ladies out there when you are assessing a situation and when you are taking in where you are at physically and what's going on around you, and also to acknowledge that, yeah, 1 in 3 women, that really sucks. But what about the perps, right? What about the perps that are not being held accountable? I know it's a very heavy subject, and I know it's not something fun to talk about, but I think it's worth having a discussion on. I'm not trying to throw all guys under a bus. That wouldn't be right at all. But I might throw 1 out of 3 under a bus. Just kidding. No violence here. We're not for violence, but we are for education. And arming yourself with that knowledge can be incredibly helpful. All right, take care, ladies. So, fellas out there, I mean, no offense. I know there's plenty of good ones. And for the ladies, look around. 1 in 3.